Welcome to What's the Big Book Actually Saying for Step 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, her, them, praying only for knowledge of His, her, their will for us and the power to carry that out. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? It sounds like what this step is reinforcing is at least the praying we did at steps 3, step 7 and step 10. Let's look at each part of it. Sort through prayer and meditation. So we talk with God and reflect deeply upon certain things. And I'll explain why meditation means to reflect deeply on things a bit later. To improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, her, or them. In other words, to over time better hear what they have to say. And let's, be honest about this. This is what the Big Book, our program for recovery, suggests, that we ask God for guidance. We ask our higher power for guidance and we get it. We hear it. We know it. Sometimes I hear it. Sometimes, this is just me, I feel it. And in a really good day where I've got some good conscious contact with God, I know that this is not coming from me. It's coming from a deeper, wider, higher place. Praying only for knowledge of His, her, their will for us and the power to carry that out. In other words, reinforcing the sentiment of at least the step 3 to 7 and 10 prayers, and in fact, probably the sentiment for most of the recovery we've done that far. Helping others, moral psychology, proper use of the will, which is power here, to carry out God's will. Let's look at those 3 prayers just very quickly. So this idea of praying only for the knowledge of His, her, their will for us and the power to carry it out. Well, at step 3, that's expressed as, may I do thy will always. At step 7, it's grant me strength, power, strength, potato, potato, as I go out from here to do your bidding, will, bidding. Step 10, boy, aren't we cutting to the chase now? Thy will, not mine, be done. I love the brackets. My will, not, thy will, not mine. Just a reminder, not mine, be done. So that's the theme that we carry into the prayer and meditation step. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. This is the step 11 section as it starts off. Now, meditation, when was the book written? 38, 39. What did meditation mean then? Because maybe the definition has changed over the years. Here's what meditation from the 1930s Oxford Dictionary is. The action or an act of meditating. Well, thank you for stating the obvious, Oxford Dictionary. Serious and sustained reflection or mental contemplation. Mental contemplation, thinking, reflecting. Sustained reflection, again, thinking. There's a thinking field to this. Maybe that's why in the rooms, I could never work out for a while why we have that little card that says think, think, think. Well, this is about think, think, thinking, right? And in religious use, and that should be relevant to us, even though it's not a religious program, the continuous application of the mind, thinking, to the contemplation, thinking, of some religious truth, mystery, or object of reverence as a devotional exercise. So we show our interest in being devoted to God as an exercise through thinking about something. And this whole section of the Big Book, this entire step, suggests the things that we can think about, meditate on. I love the idea of contemplating truth and mystery. And yes, it's religious truth and mystery, but we'll look at the term religious later on from the same dictionary. And, there's an element of spirituality attached even to the definition of religious, but we'll get to that. My point here is we're being asked to think deeply about something and one thing at a time. And I guess I'm labouring this point because some people that I've had discussions with in the last 10, 20 years about meditation, they seem to have a different perception of what it means. And that is totally okay. I mean, words change over time. And meditative practice is probably a lot broader than this dictionary definition. So I guess it's, safe to say that we can do other forms of meditation. Of course, it's a free country and I do other forms of meditation as well. But when we're doing our step 11 work, it's probably a good suggestion to think about what they thought, the writers of the big book thought meditation was, and bring a lot of that into our practice so that we know we're at least following the suggestions. And to that end, this is how we set up the Step 11 section of the big book. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. In other words, let's do it. Let's not, beat around the bush. Better people than we are using it constantly. I love that phrase. It reminds me of how it works and that section of how it works when, if you want what we have, the founding members of AA, if you want what those guys had and you're willing to go to any lengths to get it, in other words, to not be shy about it, you are ready to take certain steps. So here this is just one of the things that those people had that we were asked at step 3 to go to any lengths to get, they were the better. Surely, to me, when I came into the rooms, the older, sober members were the better people. And they were using prayer. So I started to open up my mind and heart to it as well. I wanted what they had. And why? As it says here, it works if we have the proper attitude. And what's the proper attitude? Well, let's start again with those prayers. Steps 3, 7, and 10 prayers. Thy will be done. Not mine, brackets. That's the attitude we bring into this. We're doing it to get a sense of what God wants us to do for God and others. And I don't know about you, but I came into the rooms not really focused on that side of life at all. I needed a lot of help to get out of my head and out of my way, to stop being the actor running the show. Let's continue. It would be easy to be vague about this matter. So here again, we get this suggestion, it's easy to think you know what prayer and meditation are, to be vague about those things. But yet we believe we can make some valuable suggestions. So this is all about a single paragraph sets up step 11 to go, hey, with this step, we're going to suggest some things. We're going to give you a path. We're going to give you concrete things to think and do rather than be vague about this. And as such, we need to enter step 11 with this idea of, well, I'm being given things to try and they should make sense to me. And if they do, I'm going to do them and let's see where we get. Reflect upon the day you had before finishing it. That's the first part of step 11 in the book. We look at how to do that. Then we look at reflecting upon the day you're about to have before starting it. And then we end up with just a short section on reflecting and checking in through the day. So it's all about how we run the day. I should actually not use the word run, how we ask God to help us run the day. What's interesting is the flow of this section. It starts with going to bed before then waking up and then living a day. Some people might suggest it might work better if we started with getting up, having a day, and then finishing the day. But that's just the writer's choice. Let's look at our nighttime recovery check-in. Now, you'll notice I'm not calling it an inventory. I know that many members do, and in fact, AA conference-approved literature does. But for me, as we look at what the big book's actually saying, I do think it's helpful to call this a nighttime recovery check because that's what we're actually doing. We're checking in on how we're going with the activities and practices we've been taught thus far through steps 4 through to 9. And I'll show you what I mean. What you get is a series of questions we answer before going to sleep. We reflect on the day before we finish the day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? In other words, do I need to continue to take personal inventory? Because they're literally the emotions we take inventory on, right? Some of them. We have that wonderful suggestion at step 10. Continue to take personal inventory, and if we were wrong, promptly admit it. Well, really, where does inventory start? Well, I guess what we're doing before we go to bed is going, well, did I actually feel things today that I should have taken inventory on, but didn't? Do we owe an apology? Well, that's pretty much asking, do I need to make amends? And again, steps 8, 9, and 10 come into play. We didn't do those things to get them done and then never do them again. We have to do them on a daily basis. If we harm someone, if we owe someone an apology, do we need to make an amends? That's how I read that one. Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? That sounds an awful lot like step 5. And again, we don't do step 5 to get it done. We do step 5 to clear away the wreckage of our past, but then keep doing it whenever we need to. If we inventory something, if we feel resentful, if we harm someone, or whatever the situation is, fear, sex, conduct, if we continue to take inventory on an ongoing basis, which is the step 10 suggestion, well, we need to be sharing that inventory with someone. So we're replicating what we learned as we initially cleared away the wreckage of our past when we wreck a little bit of the present. So, do I need to do what I learned at step 10? Sorry, at step 5. Oh, my apologies. Were we kind and loving toward all? Now, this is a very lovely way, I feel, of at least getting in the ballpark of reflecting on, and this is where my mind goes, have I harmed anyone and who did I help? So there's a below the line and above the line question that pops into my mind when I reflect on, were we kind and loving toward all? And often my answer is yes, except for that person who I did talk over the top of. Do you know what I mean? Or was I kind and loving toward all? You know what? I did kind of overshare in that meeting, and there were 2 people who didn't get a chance to share. And, was that kind and loving? Probably not. But hey, I did help people as well. So this question gives me the chance to think above the line about, where I did carry out God's will, where I did think about others and help others. So there's a lot to think about at that one. What could we have done better? Which my mind sometimes drifts towards, well, did I miss opportunities to be of service to God and others? And why? Because what is better for a recovering alcoholic? Done better, a life done better. Well, if we don't get it by now, we might never get it. Our life from step 3 on is about helping others, doing God's will. So that's literally what better is for us. So did I miss any opportunities to do that, to be better, to be more in recovery a little bit more profoundly, to be of service to God and others? And finally, were we thinking of ourselves, and this labours the point and continues it, were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? And this, I love this general suggestion that our job is to pack things, good things, self-forgetting things, helping others things, into the stream of life. Because boy, didn't we actually muddy up the stream of life when we were drinking, when we were self-centered, So a lot of these questions are reiterating the path that we really took a serious commitment to put ourselves on at step 3. There's so much reiteration and growth through that reiteration, deepening and widening of where we began in step 3, through the rest of our lives as we continue to do these actions, put them into our life until it becomes our way of life. And it continues. But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. Big Book is now labouring this point. Usefulness to others is why we're doing all of this. So, these are some of the very emotions we are using this nighttime inventory, and there's me using the word inventory, to rid ourselves of. So the idea of, okay, I'm reflecting on where I felt worry, remorse, and morbid reflection throughout the day. Oh, but while I do that, now I'm feeling worry, remorse, and morbid. Let's avoid the irony of this nighttime check. We just need to, and this is one of the skills we need to develop in AA, is the ability to reflect. And this has happened to me at step 4. I was able, by taking that concept of a retail stock take into how I looked at all that crappy stuff I did and felt and said, I was able to look at it without feeling worry, remorse, and morbid reflection. And this is continuing that. Making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. So now we're getting into the way we solve problems in recovery from step 11 on. We ask for God's forgiveness. Okay, so I wasn't perfect today, God. Express regret, please forgive me. But what do I need to do about it? Now, we started asking that question at steps 8 and 9, really. How should I make an amends to this person? What is the right thing to do when I owe money, when I've committed a crime? I need God's help with that. And this idea of setting the problem clearly, asking God to help you with it, and then waiting for the answer to come, which I call the set and forget part of recovery. It's an incredible system. In other words, okay, I am a little bit worried about this. I'll articulate the problem, ask for forgiveness, give that problem to you. Now I can go to sleep. And I have confidence, I have faith, hope, and trust that you'll give me some sense of what I need to do at the right time. It's an interesting thing. It's an act of faith. So, morning recovery plan. We get to the next section. Reflect upon the day you're about to have before starting it. Really good suggestion. Full disclosure, I do a lot of time management work with people in my job. I find that this section and the previous, the nighttime check, really works for a lot more people than alcoholics. You know, we live in a world that is full of people never getting their to-do list finished. People are constantly multitasking, stressing their brain out, trying to get 3 things done at once, feeling incompetent. It's not just alcoholics who feel that way. Please trust me. And the idea of just finding that short period of time before you start to get in the day to fix the things that might happen in the day, it's such a cool system. Here's what the big book suggests. We consider our plans for the day. I have plans. I need to consider them, focus on them, meditate on them, think deeply and widely upon what I've got on today. How practical is that? You know, and when I talk to people about contemporary forms of meditation, time management rarely comes up in the conversation, and yet this is what it's about. What have I got on today? Priority management, time management, whatever you want to call it. I've got to manage my day without being willful. What have I got on? Who am I meeting with? Where do I have to turn up? And what do I need to do? What does doing better, referring to one of the previous parts of this section of the big book, what does better look like in all the things I have to do today before I start it? Before we begin, we ask God to, because that's a really tough task, right? That could stress us out. So how do we do that? Next suggestion. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking. In other words, our meditation, which is what we've learned thinking is, asking especially that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest and self-seeking motives. Again, sorry, my mistake. That should say step 10 prayer. I apologise. I will not mind be done. Please forgive me. In other words, we ask for the emotions that could distract us from considering our plans for the day to be removed so that we can get back to that step 4 kind of, I've just got to basically objectively look at things, calmly look at things, yeah? Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. In other words, focus clearly, reflect deeply, for after all, God gave us brains to use. What an awesome thing to think about. That, you know, when I hand things over to God, it's often situations and problems. But I don't hand my thinking over to God. Quite the opposite. I hand over the things that block my thinking to God so that I can actually start to really use this brain of mine to its optimum. And what I've discovered in my decade or so's recovery is under these conditions, my thinking is actually, it can be really clear. And sometimes I feel, you know, the full force of my ability to think being brought upon a situation because I'm not feeling anything. I'm just reflecting. I'm meditating on something that I need to look at, not look away from. With God's guidance, sometimes the answers just pop into my head. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. In fact, you know, I do think if we're busy people, we might only have time some mornings to look at where we do have indecision. I mean, if, you know, oh, well, I've got that meeting at 10 o'clock and I love everybody in that room and we know exactly where we're going, it's going to be a great meeting, there's going to be muffins. Probably I don't need to plan for that. I need to plan for the non-muffin, everybody's angry at me and each other meeting. We may not be able to determine which course of action, which is, I think that's what the course means here, which course of action to take. Here we ask God for an intuitive decision. So again, it's that thing we learnt to do in the previous section where we looked at going to bed. God, okay, I'm going to really articulate the problem. I'm going to give that problem to you so that you can give me the decision, an intuitive decision. So it'll come back to me via a sense of, okay, this is what I need to do. Intuition. right? And I find that, this is what I've gotten better at over my time, is just going, okay, so I've really reflected on this course, well, the various courses of action, and maybe I need to look at the problem and not the courses of action I need to take. Maybe I just need to define the problem a little bit more so that I'm not looking at 4 options. I'm not looking at any options at all. I'm just setting the problem, giving it to God, and letting God give me the single course of action that my intuition suggests is the right one. What a brilliant system. Because what do we do as soon as we give God the problem? Once we say, okay, here's the problem, please help me, we relax and take it easy. In other words, we set and forget. We don't struggle. We set and forget. We move on. We are often surprised how the right answers will come after we have tried this for a while. We find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. So this idea of, rather than feel the weight of a problem by keeping it very mentally close by as I move through the day, I do the exact opposite. I articulate the problem with some of that objectivity, sometimes even that dispassion I learned at step 4. Articulate the problem, give it to God, and then forget all about it. That's insane, but in a good way, because what happens is the answer just pops in my head. And I've spoken to many members about this. It happens for them, this idea of, I just need to be better at setting the problem and actually looking at the problem, not trying to jump over it to find the solution. All right, let's keep going. We usually conclude the period of meditation, the book continues, with a prayer that will be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. So here's this theme again of, and when I say theme, we started this in our nighttime reflection. God, help me with the stuff that comes up. Show me guidance so I don't spend all day trying to just, push my way through and feel like I'm the only person dealing with this stuff, We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. So it's a really lovely thing to bring into the day, isn't it? The idea of, I could get really pressured, I could get really busy. And these are all triggers for self-centered thinking. I'm going to keep this part of my life, the prayer part of my life, pretty simple, pretty clean. I'm not going to muddy it up with self-centeredness. I'm going to just keep focused on, help me understand what to do for you and others. Yeah? But we can pray for ourselves. Here's the sting in the tail. If others will be helped. This theme of helping others is there throughout, isn't it? Throughout the big book. So we can go, okay, so if I am all, in my head, for example, if I'm really stressed, help me become de-stressed so I can focus more on others. It's almost a rejigging thing, isn't it? I just need to get back to being selfless. Help me do that. And times we do ask things for ourselves to get there. If not members of, this is an interesting part of the big book for many of us because, more and more members don't seem to be religious in that traditional way, the way they were in the 30s, and certainly the way many of the founding members of AA were. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. For example, we all know this, the Serenity Prayer, the St. Francis Prayer, Thomas Merton Prayer. And I think it's really nice to say, well, look, if you're not religious, that's cool, but have a think about a few prayers. And I do feel that this has been reinforced by many older sober members I know. Just look for the ideas in them. Don't worry so much about how they're written. One of the prayers that isn't here, of course, is the Lord's Prayer. I haven't put that there, and my mistake, I didn't mean that. But, I know when many Australians started doing online meetings in America during COVID, it was like, they recite the Lord's Prayer over there. That's a bit odd. Many people would say to me, that's a bit religious. And of course, it is a very, very religious prayer, but what are the ideas inside? It's a killer prayer for ideas, and they're so on point when it comes to what we're trying to do in recovery. And there are many helpful books also, spiritual books, spiritual texts, blah, blah, blah. Some are conference approved, many are not. And then there's this wonderful suggestion, be quick to see where religious people are right, make use of what they offer. What an interesting suggestion. And many people might balk at that, not just AA people, but in general. I don't know about where you are living right now, but in Australia, less and less people are going to church than ever before. And so, even finding religious people can be tough sometimes where I live. But anyway, the idea of being quick to see where they're right, that's a really interesting suggestion, and one that I've actually taken up in the last couple of years. And I've really enjoyed talking to my local priest, for example, even though I don't go to his church. I'm not a churchgoer, but he's very open to talking to anyone who wants to be spiritual. And when you're with a guy like that, you realise, oh, you're religious and I'm spiritual, but boy, we're the same. And just on that, here's the dictionary definition from the 30s about, just that term religious, because it's a really difficult term for many members in AA, modern members. And here's what it says. It says, yes, imbued with religion, but look at this bit, exhibiting the spiritual or practical effects of religion. Well, that's exactly what we're asked to do in AA when it comes to prayers, to look for the spiritual and practical suggestions or effects of them. So we are not a religious program in AA, but we draw heavily from the well of spiritual ideas that come from religion. And to see the difference between those two, for me personally, is the difference between life and death as an alcoholic, practicing recovery through AA. It's a really lovely thing to have opened my mind and my soul to over the last few years. Then we get to the ongoing daily stuff. And this is a very short section that some call the Step 11 promises, and they certainly read as promises, but they're very, to me, they read as promises like a self-help guide, like a hardware guide. If you use this tool in the right way, here's what will happen. They're very practical. It goes, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought of action. We're already there, aren't we, through the last two types of reflection. If I've got a problem, stop and prop. Don't make it up myself. Ask God for the direction, the right thought or action. So it's this constant assistance. Give me assistance with inspiration, please. I'm really trusting that your thinking is better than mine, God, but over time it'll probably be my thinking that's better too. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. There's that step 10 prayer again. Thy will, brackets, not mine, be done. Okay, so we're really starting to build this into our lives, right? It's nice to pick up that little bit of step 3 where we started on this spiritual journey. We're no longer running the show. We are then in much less danger of fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. In other words, the stuff we have to inventory. We become much more efficient. So there's one upside to doing all this work. We stop wasting so much time. We don't tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. The actor running the show. This is true for many alcoholics in recovery. We do become more efficient. We do not tire so easily. We have more time in our day, and I use a lot of that time for service activities in AA. It works, it really does. That's the parting note from the members of AA about their perception of where they are in their recovery when they wrote the book. It works, it really does. I would say they are correct. And on that rather happy note, have a happy sober day.